Every year, millions of people participate in one of the most expensive and highly ritualized ceremonies in human history. We dress in medieval robes, we sit in crowded stadiums, we wait for hours just to walk across the stage, shake a stranger's hand, and receive a rolled up piece of paper. We're told that this paper is a golden ticket. It's the boundary between a lifetime of economic security and a lifetime of struggle. Because of that narrative, we have built the most formally credentialed society to ever exist on Earth. But it hides a massive systemic paradox. While the number of degrees skyrocketing globally have never been higher, employers are screaming louder than ever about a historic skill gap. We have more graduates, but less actual competence. Why? Because somewhere along the line, a dangerous cognitive glitch took over our culture, and we confused the map for the actual territory. We fell into the diploma fallacy, the belief that aiming for credentials is the same as being educated.
Humanity is a part of nature, not above it.
Human ingenuity, energy, goodwill and talent is being lost on an industrial scale.
Ikaw ba ay gagraduate ngayong Marso at maghanap na ng trabaho?
Entry-level jobs are vanishing at an alarming rate.
Finally, finished with all my homework. I don't know what I learned, but I know I'm done learning.
Just guys, you go to sleep.
To understand how we broke higher education, we have to understand a rule from the economics known as the Goodhart's Law. Formulated by British economist Charles Goodhart, it simply states, when a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure. Think about it like this. Originally, a university degree was supposed to be a measurement. It was an external indicator that you spent 4 years reading deeply, debating fiercely, and mastering a complex discipline. The degree was there just to be a thermometer. The education was the actual temperature. But what happens when the entire economic system tells a teenager that the thermometer was the only thing that mattered to a hiring manager? Simple. The student stops taking focus on the temperature and only locks in on the thermometer. Learning right now undergoes a process economics call rent-seeking. It becomes a game of optimization. You don't read a book to understand human nature. You read the book to find 3 quotes that fit the exact rubric your professor provided so you can secure a passing grade. You didn't learn mathematical theory. You memorize specific steps to pass Tuesday's exam. And then your brain completely purges that data 2 days later to make room for the next test. The system rewards the behavior. You get a high GPA, you get the Latin honors, you get the paper. But beneath that gown, the intellectual substance has been completely hollowed out. You haven't been educated, you've been trained to tolerate bureaucracy. This isn't some personal failure of lazy students. It's a structural trap. 50 years ago, a British sociologist named Ronald Dorr noticed the exact shift happening on a global scale. In his landmark book, The Diploma Disease, Dorr warned that when a society starts treating education primarily as a job rationing mechanism, the institution ceases to be a place of learning altogether. It becomes a sorting factory. And in a sorting factory, the quality of what happens inside the classroom drops to 0. We've pretty much traded the pursuit of wisdom for the anxious accumulation of credentials. We've turned young people into asset hunters, chasing an increasingly expensive piece of paper, not out of the desire to understand more about the world, but out of sheer unadulterated fear of being left behind. We are paying thousands, if not millions, for the signifier, while completely losing the thing that's being signified. But it wasn't always this way. Believe it or not, this wasn't always this way. To understand how we fell into this trap, we have to look at the exact moment that the dream was weaponized against the student. To understand this, we have to go beyond the Pacific, into the Americas, in the past.
For example, here at Howard University, located in Washington, D.C., this class in mechanical designing trains men and women for jobs in the plants that make our tanks, guns, and machines.
It really began as an act of grace, really. In 1944, the GI Bill flooded universities with nearly millions of returning soldiers. Suddenly, the university campus was no longer just an exclusive walled garden where old money elite sent their children to learn high society manners and do what they just pleased. It became a factory for the middle class. And for a generation, it worked. A degree actually meant something because it represented the scarcity of knowledge. If you had that paper, you possessed secrets the average person couldn't access. You knew how to bridge rivers, interpret microeconomic trends, or parse classical literature. The market rewarded the degree because the degree was a reliable shadow cast by actual competence. And yet again the calculations broke. Think of it like this. When an economy prints too much money, the money loses its value. So, when a society prints too many degrees, prints too many credentials, the exact same thing happens to the credits. Economists call it credential inflation. But I believe that's too sterile for a term for the psychological anxiety it inflicts. Think of it like a crowd standing on a concert. If you are the only one who stands up, you get a magnificent view. But humans are imitative by nature. So, a person behind you stands up, then the row behind them, so on, until soon the entire stadium is standing. No one's view has improved. Everyone is standing, their legs are aching, paying premium price for the exact same view they would have if they just sat down. By the end of the century, we reached a tipping point. The bachelor's degree became the new high school diploma. We didn't actually elevate the intelligence of the workforce, we just raised the tax required to enter it. It's a concept sociologists call degree credentialism, I think. The artificial inflation of job requirements. Today, we require 4 years degree for an entry-level corporate role that requires nothing more than basic literacy and a week of on-job training. We have locked the gates of basic economic survival behind a 6-figure toll booth. And the universities, sensing this hostage market, stopped acting like a temple of wisdom. They started acting like a relationship between a consumer, a luxury brand, really. When a consumer pays nearly $80,000 a year for a product, they do not want friction. They do not want the agonizing existential crisis of an intellectual life. They want a premium experience. To justify their predatory tuition rates, tuitions underwent a massive, conscientious wave of administrative bloat, hiring armies of marketers, diversity consultants, and student experience coordinators. The student stopped being a disciple, they became a consumer. And the professor stopped being a master of a craft, they became a service provider. This is the tragedy of the modern university. When you commodify enlightenment, you kill it. To keep the customer happy, grades were inflated. To keep the bureaucracy moving, learning was reduced to a rigid, uninspired rubric. We've built a machine where students pay for the brand. The university sells a lifestyle. And the actual education, the thing that's supposed to be the main goal, becomes nothing more than a inconvenient byproduct of that transaction. We are a society of asset hunters, starving of wisdom, but suffocating under the weight of our own credentials. But this tragic loop between the student and the university couldn't really survive in a vacuum. A machine that expensive needs fuel, and fuel is provided by the corporate gatekeepers, the silent accomplices who turn the diploma from a symbol to growth to a weapon of survival. To understand how the trap closed shut, we have to look at the demand side of the equation. We have to look at the cold, unfeeling algorithms of human resources. Open any local job portal, look up a vacancy for maybe a department store cashier in Metro Manila, a front desk receptionist, or a basic data entry clerk, and read the requirements. Must possess 4 years bachelor's degree, preferably from a top-tier university, with a pleasuring personality. Think about the quiet and sheer violence of that requirement. Operating a point-to-scale cash register does not require deep understanding of economics. Answering a telephone doesn't need you to know the secrets of the universe. These are functional skills that can be taught in maybe 2 weeks. Yet, we have structuralized a system where high schoolers or senior high school graduates, the very people that K-12 curriculum promised to make job ready, are systematically locked out of that formal economy. Why? Because human resources are drowning. When a single entry-level opening attracts 10,000 applicants from a desperate, hyper-competitive workforce, the hiring manager doesn't look for competence. Competence takes too long to process. No, they need a filter to maybe traverse 80% of that bulk of applicants out of sheer practicality. And one of those filters just happens to be the requirement for a degree. The computer algorithm doesn't care if you are brilliant, resourceful, or hungry. It only checks one binary code. If has degree, true. It is an insurance policy for the corporate middle manager. It is pure systematic risk aversion. If an HR officer hires an ambitious senior high school graduate who ends up being underperforming, the manager's judgment is questioned. But if they hire a cum laude graduate from a prestigious university who turns out to be utterly incompetent, the manager is safe. The pedigree shields them from the blame. The degree is no longer proof of skill. It is a bulletproof vest. And so, we have the Great Philippine Mismatch. The Philippine Statistics Authority consistently tracks hundreds of thousands of unemployed or underemployed college graduates. We have licensed nurses managing customer complaints from foreign techs like BPO hubs. We have engineers shelving stockrooms. We have created an economy that demands an elite credential for ordinary work while offering ordinary wages that can barely cover the cost of living. It is the silent taxation of the working class. To get a job that pays minimum wage, keyword minimum, a family must first invest hundreds of thousands of pesos they do not have into an education to a job that they will never use. We are running on a cultural glitch. We tell our youth that the diploma is the babaon of poverty, out of poverty, the ultimate shield against economic vulnerability. But when the corporate world uses that shield as a basic gatekeeper filter, the shield loses its power. It just becomes an expensive uniform you are forced to buy just to be allowed to stand in line. We're barely halfway.
Just letting you know, if you apply for a job and they ask for experience, just lie. Because even if they hire you, they still gotta train you. That's the only way to get a job in this economy.
Yet, this entire system is incredibly fragile. This unspoken collusion between colleges selling a lifestyle and corporations buying insurance policies is hitting a brick wall. Because we've entered an era where cheat codes have become automated. In the first act of the story, we talked about how students hack the system. They don't read the book to find the truth, they skim it to find 3 quotes that fit the professor's rubrics. But what happens when you don't even need to worry about that? What happens when a machine can simulate the hacked thermometer flawlessly, rendering the entire measurement useless? When OpenAI released its largest language model to the public, it didn't just introduce new tech, it dropped practically a nuclear bomb on the traditional concepts of academic evaluation. For decades, the currency of the universe has been written assignments, the reflection paper, the take-home exam. We assume that if a student handed in 5 pages of a coherent prose, it was a reliable shadow cast by the active human mind. But now, the shadow can be synthesized in 4 seconds. Look at the profound comedic absurdity of this entire relationship. The students used artificial AI to generate an essay they didn't write to satisfy a rubric the professor automated, to get a grade they didn't earn. Then, they take that pristine, inflated GPA and put it on a resume, which they send to multi-million-dollar companies. Then, on the other side, you have corporate HR managers overwhelmed by the thousands of applications, uploads those resumes into AI screening tools. The corporate AI reads the resume generated by the student's AI, matches it by a job description written by a company AI, and the output's a shortlist. It is a machine talking to a machine, algorithms evaluating algorithms, and the human being caught in the middle is learning absolutely nothing. We are paying millions of pesos to witness a digital ghost play a game with itself, experience an experience without actually experiencing. This isn't just some crisis for universities. This is an existential This isn't just some crisis for universities. This isn't just some crisis for universities. This is an existential threat to the very engine of the modern Philippine middle class. Over the last 25 years, the economic bedrock of our urban centers has been BPO and knowledge-based process outsourcing sectors. We've built an empire on human compliance. We've trained generations of graduates to speak with global neutral accents, to follow rigid corporate scripts, to process data and manage foreign customer complaints. We've trained our youth to act like highly reliable, deeply polite computers. But what happens when the actual computer can do the exact same work for a fraction of a cent per minute? The Diploma Fallacy taught us that if you only memorize the script, you get the prize. If you follow the protocol, you get economic security. But AI has commoditized protocol. It has turned compliance into free resources. If your entire education consisted of learning how to pass a test,
how to summarize an article you didn't read, or how to format a spreadsheet according to a predetermined template, you haven't been prepared for the future. You've been prepared to be replaced. Because AI is an infinitely better being, a bureaucratic than you are. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't ask for benefits. It never forgets the rubric. By treating education as a game of optimization, we've accidentally trained our children to compete with an arena where technology is undefeated. We've taught them to accumulate knowledge while forgetting that in this digital age, knowledge is no longer scarce. Capability is scarce. Wisdom is scarce. The ability to look at a chaotic, unstructured human problem and create an order out of it, that is scarce.
We are watching the death of the cheat code. For 50 years, the diploma was the ultimate hack. It was the golden ticket that allowed you to say, I am qualified, without ever actually having to prove what you can do. It was a license to bypass the proof of competence. But when the market is flooded with perfect credentials generated by imperfect minds aided by flawless software, the value of the paper drops to zero. The system is choked on its own signifiers. The thermometer has been hacked so many times that the glass has shattered and the mercury is spilling all over the floor. The game is over. The old map has completely detached from the territory. And now, we are left standing in the ruins of the credential society, forced to answer a question that we have spent a century trying to avoid. If your paper can no longer save you, what can? The answer to that question is terrifying. But it is also one of the most liberating truths in our generation. I hope that we will live long enough to witness the great uncoupling, the historic moment where human worth, intelligence, and the capability are finally separated from the institutional stamps. The monopoly is cracking. For the first time in a century, the market is beginning to realize that if a machine can fake a credential, then a credential can no longer be used to judge the human. We are being forced to look past the signifiers and return at long last to the thing that's being signified. We are moving away from a society based on proof of attendance, on moving towards a society based on proof of work. In the old world, you told your employer who you were showing them a logo, the name of your university, the Latin honors, stamped on the register. In the new world, the logo doesn't shield you. The market asks a much simpler, more brutal question. What have you built? Look at the quiet revolution happening in global tech and creative industries. Companies like Google, Apple, IBM, and even major government sectors globally have been systematically stripping degrees requirement for their job descriptions. They didn't do this out of charity or progressive ideals. They did this out of sheer survival. They realized that the pristine GPA graduate often couldn't write a clean line of code or manage real-world crisis, while a self-taught 19-year-old with a deep portfolio of actual projects could solve the problem on day one. I beg you to read the books that aren't about syllabuses. Build a project that doesn't have to be about a grading rubric.
fail at businesses where there's no safety net of an F or a D, and tell you when to stop. Learn how to think, not what to memorize. The future does not belong to the most credentialed. The future belongs to the most radical learners. The people who can look at a shifting world, discard what no longer works, and teach themselves what does. The next time you see yourself seeing a grand, highly ritualized ceremony, the next time you see millions of people walking across a stage in medieval robes and receive that rolled up piece of processed tree bark, look closely. Do not see it as a golden ticket. See it for what it truly is. A beautiful paper that marks the end of the game. But remember, the game is over. The real world has begun. And out there, out in the raw, unmapped territory of reality, nobody cares about your passport. They just want to see you walk. But don't misunderstand me. This is an anti-education manifesto. I hope not. This is an anti-schooling manifesto. There's a profound difference between the two. Schooling is a transaction. Education is transformation. Schooling is about compliance, rubrics, and the anxious accumulation of assets to appear confident, to appear presentable. Education is the lifelong, stubborn pursuit to wisdom, capacity, and understanding. We have to reclaim the word educated. We have to stop letting institutions convince us that we are empty vessels until we pay them for a stamp of approval. If you want to survive the coming decade, if you want to build a life that cannot be automated by a machine or filtered out by HR algorithms, you have to cure yourself of the diploma fallacy. You have to try to stop hacking the thermometer. You have to focus on the temperature.